Hello, and welcome to Book 6, Chapter 4 of You Should Be Reading. Today I would like to go back to light novels because I've been reading quite a lot of them lately. And the light novel series in particular I want to talk about today is it's a bit of a tricky one, which you already know if you clicked on this video. I would like to talk about the Saga of Tanya the Evil. Now, putting aside the fact that the original, like the actual translation of the original Japanese name for this series, which I believe translates to the war memoirs of a young girl. Like, personally, I find that to be a much more descriptive and apt term for this series of books than the Saga of Tanya the Evil. Uh, that's just a minor nitpick on the grand scheme of things. Now, what is this series about? Well, it's an isekai series, much like a lot of light novels are. Let's be honest, isekai has gotten popular. Um, but this particular one is um, a series about a salaryman who is very much the type of person that wants to make themselves completely valuable to their company, to show what good of a worker they are, to show their ability to follow rules, because rules are very big to this person, and they're not the sort of person that other people would find enjoyable to hang around. Uh, in the book and in the light novels and in the anime, uh, it really points out and shows that this person has no issues thinking of themselves first and others second. They are a selfish individual at heart, um, but that they are, um, how to put this? They're the sort of person who will throw you under the bus without a moment's hesitation if they think it would either benefit themselves or help the company as a whole. They will fire people for not being productive enough. Like, this is a person that treats people like numbers a lot of the time, and ends up, because of reasons, getting he fires somebody and gets pushed in front of a train. And that's when God comes down and starts talking to him, and they have a conversation. And this fellow just opens up his mouth and digs his own grave, more or less. Uh, and so gets reincarnated as Tanya. Tanya Dugurachev, a young orphaned girl in what is very much meant to be an alternate world version of World War One ish. Like, there's some mixing and mingling of some World War II stuff in this series, uh, but it's timeline wise, the stuff that happens in this other world is around 1920s. Um, so it's like before before World War II. Also, this world that you that Tanya finds herself in has never encountered a world war before, but is so in the novels. So you have main character who is, for all intents and purposes, kind of unlikable, kind of a dick, and maybe evil. Um, Definitely not a good person. So why should you read this? Well, that's the thing. You don't need to have stories that have main characters that are likable. Um, a friend of this author, Carlo Zen, who writes the Saga of Tanya the Evil, uh, a good friend of Carlo Zen is, and I'm going to mess this up, so please give me a moment because I'm going to mess up uh, the author's name here. There we are. Kugane Maruyama, the author of the Overlord series. They're friends. And it's very interesting that both of them have light novels where your main character is not really a good person. Like, although the main character in Overlord, the titular Overlord, is kind of a hapless, just kind of goes along and is treating everything like a game, um, which, also has its own issues. But regardless, it's interesting to me that these two light novel authors are friends, and they both have characters that aren't what you would consider to be heroic or good people. Now, do I recommend the Saga of Tanya the Evil? That depends. Uh, One of the things that a lot of light novels have, that this one has as well, is a kind of a reiterative feel to it. Like, you will run into, having read quite a few light novels recently, one thing I've noticed in a lot of them is that every light novel, like in each volume, they will reiterate things that have already been said in the past. Um, because more than likely, the fact they do this because you don't know if somebody's reading this in order or not. So you have to explain things. Sometimes you will get even more explanation or having things explained multiple times. Um, this may be a process, maybe because of the fact that we are translating it from Japanese to English, and where the Japanese language might have a little bit more nuance that gets lost in translation. And when it comes to English, it just seems like it's repeating the same thing, even though what would be repeating is something that has a little bit more nuance or a little bit more perspective in the Japanese. This is this is entirely possible. But if you're okay with that, like if this is something that does not turn you off, um, then getting into light novels might be something you're interested in, and there's some in this one. The main question is, do you like war stories? Because that's what this is. This is a war story about the Empire, which is absolutely like legally distinct Germany from World War One, that is fighting against legally distinct France and Norway and England and Russia. Like, there's all legally distinct entities which are absolutely, you can look at it and go, yeah, that's basically Germany. That's basically Russia. Like, all of this is there. It is in the text. It's not even subtext. And the story goes where Tanya, this salaryman, is in this body of a young girl in a nation that is going to war, and has retained all the memories of her previous life. And is uncertain how she's going to survive because she doesn't really seem to have power. But then it is discovered in her youth that she has magic, and mages tend to be very highly sought after. So, what she decides, because she still has like the mind of a 30-year-old, uh, and because of this, she understands that, well, mages will be getting drafted eventually. So if I'm going to get drafted into this war, I should volunteer instead and get put on an officer track so that I can advance and have a cushy job where I'm not having to fight. That's her thought process. And it's a good thought process. The only problem is she doesn't want to be on the front lines of the war, but she is such a company pleaser from her previous life. She is that sort of person that does the best job that she is capable of because it's a point of pride to her to be valuable to the company. And in this case, the company is the army, the military. So she does the best job she can and ends up proving herself invaluable and thus kind of becomes a spearhead in a lot of cases for the army. It's it's a series of this person trying to get themselves out of harm's way, but because of everything they're doing to get themselves out of harm's way, they end up putting themselves in harm's way and having to fight. And very early on, after becoming an ace pilot, or an ace pilot, listen to me, an ace mage, a named mage, um, getting this reputation built up around her, she ends up going to officer school and getting put in charge of training and then running a unit of mages that can be a rapid response unit and go anywhere. And her and the mages that she trained proved to be just better than everybody else. Any other countries, they're just better. They're better trained. They have better equipment, um, and they do a lot of fighting and a lot of killing. And that's one of the big things about this series. It is a war story. People are going to die. Lots of people are going to die. There's going to be like absolute moments where, even though the text itself of the novel is glossing over things, uh, if you think about it for a minute, you're like, wait, they just blew up a whole munitions factory in this city while people were working there. All of those people are probably dead, and there's probably like secondary casualties from other places as well. And you, once you realize this, you realize, yeah, this is war. People die, and they don't. The novels don't really wallow in this, but nor do they shy away from it either. It's very matter of fact in how it all is laid out, and the characters are great. The character of Tanya Degurachav is such a wonderful little chaos goblin type of a character because she's the sort that everyone looks at her and they see this small young girl that looks very, very cute. And then she starts speaking like she's way older than she is, as well as being kind of a little cold and clinical and maybe a little demented. Um, yeah. And it just like kind of chills them. And they're like, oh, I'm not messing with her. I don't want to be on her bad side at all. And this is the people that are in the army. There is a whole sub theme in this about free will versus fate and religion, because the god, being X, as Tanya calls it, because she refuses to believe in God, um, being X has sent her to this other world and has given her like a special computation jewel, which is how mages use their magic. Because they're mages, they can fly with magic and such. And this computation jewel is special and blessed because it will allow her, like, it won't work unless she prays to God. But if she does pray, it is so OP that she can do things no other mage can do. And she needs to use it to stay alive on the front line. But the more she prays, the more she uses this, the more her mind is getting influenced and the more faithful she is becoming. Like, being X God has put Tanya in one of these untenable positions where she has to use this power in order to stay alive. But the more she uses it, the more of her core identity is eroded away. And at what point does she stop becoming herself? Like, it is something that she is worried about, this mental corruption. Um, and the books haven't gotten to an end. I have read through 12 of them as of recording, and she is. She still hasn't come to terms with that. The war still hasn't ended. Now, any of you who have seen the anime will know that there's wonderful aerial battles with the mages, and it's a wonderful spectacle and great to look at. Those battles are kind of glossed over in this. They exist, but they are not the main thrust of things. The main thrust of these books is both the political landscape of the war, the logistics of running a war, as well as the tactical maneuvers and decisions that get made by Tanya and others in the course of that war. Those three things are the main thrust of it. You can absolutely tell that Carlo Zen is 100% a war, like an old time historian war buff type person that likes these things and is putting them into these novels. Um, because, yeah, it is. The novels focus so much on the logistics and the tactics and the politics, and the actual fighting itself is kind of like, yes, it happens and we'll have a few scenes of that, but those scenes will be kind of just like kind of gloss over, like there's fighting happening and oh no, like they don't go into a lot of detail on these scenes, which is one of the reasons that I find myself really liking the books, the light novels. Like, I like the anime, don't get me wrong, loved the anime, it was great, but the books themselves deal so much with the logistics and the politics and such that that's what draws me into it. That and watching Tanya just dig her grave ever deeper, because that is a definite source of the comedy that is in there, of this little girl digging her own grave without realizing it. But I've been talking for nearly 20 minutes about this novel. You might be forgiven for thinking that I enjoy it, and I have a lot to talk about on it. But I don't want to spoil everything. I just wanted to let you know, if these are things, if anything I've said about this series uh, sparks your interest and gives you the thought that maybe you might like it, then by all means you should check it out. So that's going to be it for this episode. Until next time, please give this video a like if you've liked it, and give us a subscribe tap if you like the other videos that I'm doing here and want to be notified if new videos go live. And leave a comment down below if there's any books or light novels that you think I should check out. Um, please do that. Maybe even let me know your favorite Tanya moment if you have been reading uh, the books as well. And until next time, remember, you should be reading the Saga of Tanya the Evil. And I'll see you next time.